this could be a pretty big deal. It is a fairly big deal at the moment, but it could be a much, much bigger deal. Back in 1982, I believe it was, a federal appeals court had basically said that a company was considered to be a joint employer in situations where there were two or more employers exerted significant control over the same employees. In other words, there are situations where one hires a contractor to, I own a building, I hire a contractor to do the janitorial work. The contractor hires janitors. If I, as the owner of the building, come in and say to the janitors, hey, you got to clean over there, and you're staying here until 8 p.m. tonight, and you're not leaving until this area is done. Even though I am not the direct employer, but the contractor is, a federal court of appeals in 1982 deemed that I was a joint employer. Since that ruling, the National Labor Relations Board has really loosened up that dynamic. In other words, saying like, well, the owner of the building would really have to come in and say like, you're getting this amount of money. Or they would have to get more specific. They would have to say, you got to use a broom instead of a mop or whatever it is. But it now appears that the National Labor Relations Board is returning to that original definition provided by that federal appeals court. The general counsel, the National Labor Relations Board's lawyer, ruled yesterday that McDonald's, the corporation, could be held jointly liable for labor and wage violations that its franchise operators have committed. You'll recall that starting in 2012, and over the next subsequent almost 2 years, year and a half, there have been, I think, about a half dozen one-day wage strikes by workers at fast food places across the country, all including McDonald's. Following that, these different McDonald's punished a series of workers, about 100 of them. And 100 of them brought cases to the National Labor Relations Board seeking redress not only against the franchise operators, but McDonald's as a whole, the company. In about 40 some odd of those cases, the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, Richard Griffin, it was 181 cases. He found merit in 43 of them. About another 60 are still being studied. But in those cases, Griffin said he would include McDonald's as a joint employer. And so they are now liable for these actions taken by the franchisees. McDonald's said it's going to contest the decision, saying that the ruling would not only affect the fast food industry, but businesses like dry cleaners and car dealerships and maybe others. But it's saying that because McDonald's orders its franchise owners to strictly follow its rules on food, cleanliness, and employment practices, that McDonald's owns the restaurants that franchises, and because McDonald's often owns the restaurants themselves that the franchises use, that they have this responsibility. Now, McDonald's has a computer system that's set up to basically give franchises instructions on how to set wages In instances, it has come and told franchisees that they are paying too much. And this is important. If it is upheld in court, because it's going to be contested to the National Labor Relations Board, the entire board, and then it could theoretically it could end up going all the way to the Supreme Court. Because if it is held that McDonald's practices constitute a joint employers, this is going to mean that the National Labor Relations Board could have implications on things like minimum wages across all McDonald's employees. It could have massive implications for unionizing all McDonald's workers. Because then the union could then negotiate directly with McDonald's, the corporation. This could have massive implications across the board. Now, this is just the beginning of that process. But this could have really big implications for unions across the board. Unions and workers in general. So keep voting. And at the margins, you will see some fundamental changes. And this isn't that marginal, particularly if you work at a McDonald's. It's one story of a guy who was on a conference call. Richard Eicher, McDonald's worker from Kansas City, was describing to reporters on a conference call Tuesday, the company sends, speaking of McDonald's, representatives to a store a half a dozen times a year to check on the business, in addition to sending secret shoppers for undercover visits. The restaurant's operations are closely tracked on a corporate computer system. The only thing the franchises can skimp on is wages, said Eicher, who now makes $11.05 an hour after 25 years as a McDonald's employee. Hey. He's getting training.
Well, what's the more important point?
Shut up.
And better than nothing.
What's that? Oh, and it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
of course.
Never forget that one.
To the libertarian professor. So, interesting thing to track. And an indication, I can assure you, I can say unequivocally that Mitt Romney was not going to appoint members to the National Labor Relations Board who would have appointed a general counsel that would have taken this far. Not even close.